the United Kingdom will be minority white British by roughly 2065. With the current rates of migration, it might even happen faster than that. These left-wing politicians that enjoy the fruits of liberal society, do you think that they understand the dangers of becoming a minority in their own home?
They don't care. That's
Really?
the problem. They don't care. Keir Starmer wants to win today. He wants to keep his job.
You serious? You really think they're that
He doesn't
cynical?
care. He doesn't care. Our politicians think in the cycle of one election cycle, 2 election cycles at most. They don't care about what happens to your children or mine. 50,000 people are being monitored actively by our security services, by our intelligence services.
So you think it's more than the ones that just MI5 is monitoring?
Oh yes, absolutely, yes. 6 million Muslims in the UK, around 16% support ISIS.
Wow.
As Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the State of Palestine.
The Prime Minister Keir Starmer goes to have an iftar during Ramadan, and he promises the Muslim MPs, the Muslim community who are there, that he's going to support Palestine, that he's going to, obviously the recognition, all that stuff, and that they're not going to go to war against Iran. And the Muslims clap.
But on Iran, I want to make clear the UK was not involved in the offensive strikes of the US and Israel.
What does that say? They're already in power. They're already influencing how the Prime Minister of the UK makes decisions regarding our national security and our foreign policy.
Thank you for your brilliance and service to our country.
He wants their votes.
My name is Stefan Tompson. I'm the founder of Visagrad24, and today I'm in London interviewing one of the UK's top counter-extremism experts, Khaled Hassan. Khaled, great to have you again.
Hi, Stefan. Good to be with you again. Yeah.
I mean, we're smiling, but we're going to be discussing quite serious things. We're going to be discussing extremism. Give me an overview of the state of extremism, specifically Islamism, in the UK today.
It's actually very difficult to describe. It's an excellent question. I would probably say if the UK was a man or a woman, I would say it's life-threatening.
Okay.
I think that's the best description.
Could you talk them through some of the major threats that we have?
Yes. I think the problem we have is mainly mainstreaming extremism. So I was talking to someone recently, actually, and we were talking about PREVENT. PREVENT is meant to be the anti-radicalization program for the government. So if you have someone who shows indications that they support Hamas, or they support Al-Qaeda, or they support ISIS, whatever, you can refer them to PREVENT. And PREVENT should interfere and sort of involve them in a program that makes sure they don't go further down the rabbit hole, essentially. And PREVENT has been basically arguing institutionally that the word jihad doesn't really mean jihad. It means internal strife or internal struggle, to basically do something like not drink alcohol because, it's against Islam. So you're having your own internal jihad not to do this. So they've been, basically what they've been trying to do is, instead of actually fighting extremism, they've been trying to say, maybe we're misunderstanding extremism. And it's actually not that bad. And that's the mainstream approach in the UK now.
How many Islamists, how many Islamic extremists are there in the United Kingdom currently?
That's very, very, very difficult to judge because I think, if you look at MI5's records, you're going to see that we're talking about, maybe 50,000 people who are being monitored actively by our security services, by our intelligence services. But how many extremists? It's really difficult. It's really.
So you
really
think it's more than the ones that just MI5 is monitoring?
Oh yes, absolutely, yes. So if you look at, we almost have, I believe, 6 million Muslims in the UK. Mm-hmm. If you look at out of the 6 millions, the people who are extremist, if we look at the recent survey that was commissioned by Policy Exchange and it came out just last month in April, you have around, I believe they said around 16% support ISIS.
Wow. If you take 16% of
16% of
6 million,
yeah,
you're looking at a very large number.
Yes. But that's just ISIS. We're talking about others who, for example, believe that homosexuality should be criminalized. Like if you're gay, that's against the law. They believe it should be against the law. They believe you should you should go to prison. Actually, even greater percentage that supports Hamas.
Europe, at last count, is home to about 50 million Muslims in total. There was a fairly horrifying quote by Muammar Gaddafi, who said this probably about 20 years ago: "We will not take over Europe with the sword, we will take it over with the wombs of our women," and talked about something that many on the right, conservatives, refer to as the Great Replacement, something that the mainstream media and the radical left and left-wing politicians have for years been saying, this is a conspiracy theory, it's not happening, the Great Replacement is a debunked conspiracy theory. One of the sort of main books that the right often refers to, it's a novel, it's The Camp of the Saint by a man called Jean Raspail. This book is very hard to acquire. Amazon recently even tried to ban it. It was then unbanned after a public outcry. It was then published by Vauban Books. And then the other book that I would say is Soumission, Submission by Michel Houellebecq. Once upon a time, a darling of the French left, one of France's most acclaimed writers of the last few decades. Jean Raspail's book describes the mass arrival of people across the Mediterranean. And there is a quote that regularly goes viral: "They don't understand your world, they don't want to understand it, they will burn your beautiful oak door to keep themselves warm." And it's this sort of swarm of people. And we've seen this to a certain extent in Spain with the mass legalization of at least 500,000, the regularization of at least 500,000 citizens in Spain. We're seeing this, the Greek Minister of Interior, I believe, a few days ago announced that at least, just in Libya, at least 500,000 people are preparing themselves to cross the Mediterranean and try and reach Lampedusa. And then what we're seeing, so that's Raspail's vision, which was written about 50 years ago, coming to life in many ways. When you look at videos outside of the Spanish city in northern Africa, of Ceuta and Melilla, you have these incredible videos of swarms of migrants trying to breach the border. And then on the other hand, Houellebecq's vision of democratic takeover, of turning France. And we're seeing that and especially in the United Kingdom with the recent election, with the rise of Muslim independence, the Red-Green Alliance in the form of the Green Party, allying with Islamists, and we're seeing it with the five Gaza independents who won seats at the last general election. You are a former Muslim, you are an Egyptian as well. Tell me about understanding this from your unique perspective of being someone who is from the Arab world, who speaks Arabic, and who was a Muslim.
Yes, it's actually very interesting because when you look at this, the main problem is you will never see the Pope or recent popes saying what we did with the Crusades was something that we love. This was a great achievement. We love it. They will never say that.
Never.
It's very weird.
Even though the Crusades were a response to decades of Muslim aggression.
Absolutely, it was a war. You had basically the Muslims trying to invade, different lands.
And they successfully took over Spain, Sicily. Yes. Of course.
So the Crusades were, it was basically two forces fighting each other, and also fighting over the Holy Land, and the Crusaders going to Israel. But the point is, you will never see, a mainstream Christian voice saying today the Crusades were amazing. This was our golden time. That's the mainstream view in Islam. That's the mainstream view, saying Andalusia was our land. This was the greatest achievement we ever had. So for example, actually, Sheikh al-Azhar, who is celebrated and welcomed, including by the royal family, the British royal family, when they shake hands with him, you would think they're shaking hands with the most divine human being they've ever seen. So, they revere him really. And he said, a recent quote for him was, Islam was so great that it actually turned a bunch of tribes, warring tribes, so tribes who were at war with each other, into the greatest military force in the world, and they took over land from China to Andalusia. So this is still very much celebrated. And that's why the mindset of invasion is still very much part of the culture of Islam. It's unthinkable for any Muslim, whether they were devout or not, to condemn the invasions of Muslim armies of Europe, of North Africa, of Asia, of other parts of the world.
There is a concept in Islam that there is Dar al-Harb and Dar al-Islam, the house of war that which is not Islamic, and the house of Islam. How mainstream a view is this amongst Muslims? I suppose when I made this intro about soumission and about the camp of the saints, what I was sort of asking you about really was, how many of the 50 million Muslims that currently live in Europe, how many of these people actually believe that they are part of an Islam? I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but I am genuinely asking, are many of these 50 million Muslims, are they aware that they are part of an Islamizing force? It sounds, as I say it obviously sounds a bit ridiculous, because I know many Muslims, and I'm friends with some of them, and I've had interesting exchanges, and I enjoy drinking mint tea, and these are enjoyable, and I enjoy smoking shisha, and but also on the other hand, I'm obviously a very big critic of mass migration. I don't like the demographic changes that are taking place. Are these Muslims that have arrived in mass, are they aware that they are part of an Islamizing effort?
Some are not. I would probably say the majority are not. They do it without even realizing that they're doing it. Which means, let's look at places in Britain. Let's look at a place like Birmingham. If you look at a place like this, Muslims believe that, there is strength in numbers.
And they are right.
And they're right, absolutely. So it makes sense to have a big family. It's something to be very proud of. Even in Egypt until today, you would meet people and they would say, I come from a big and proud family, a wealthy family, a strong family. And they're totally right about this. So when they come to places like Europe, they still have more children than the average European couple. So that's one side, that's the demographic change side. Then the other side is, in Islam, even places have an identity. And I really like this actually, because Dan Burmawi was one of the main people, the founder of the Ideological Defense Institute. He was one of the main people to really promote this concept. Places, property, buildings, everything has an Islamic identity. Once it's majority owned by Muslims, it becomes a Muslim place. So you will see this. There was a recent video that came out, and you see Muslim men surrounding a British white female police officer. And they're saying those people, I think there were some YouTubers or something trying to, record in that place, saying those people cannot come into this area because this is a Muslim area. This is a Muslim community. And those people offend Islam, and they offend our Prophet. So in their mindset, once a place becomes majority Muslim, it's a Muslim place now. Muslims' rules apply there. And that's the challenge. So even the people who are not actively involved in this, you're going to see a minority of people who are actively, the Muslim vote kind of people, the people who form political movements to promote Islam in politics. Those are the people who are actively engaged in the Islamization of Britain. Those are the people who say, we want more Muslims in parliament because we want Muslim voices to be basically prominent and to lead, British foreign policy, British domestic policy. And that's the challenge. Those people are the minority, but they also drag and lead the majority, because the majority fundamentally believes in what this minority is doing. They back them up. So collectively, you're going to find that Muslim communities do really Islamize the places where they go to, basically.
There is a concept that's becoming increasingly talked about, the Red-Green Alliance. This alliance of far-left radicals and of Islamists. And we are seeing this to a certain extent with Zach Spilensky's party, the Green Party in the UK, that has made a strange alliance with people who could be described as Islamists, who hold very conservative, very radical Muslim views. Talk me through this Red-Green Alliance, Khaled.
I've been saying this recently, and I think I will continue to say it for the rest of my days. We need to destroy the left. We completely need to destroy the left. Because the problem with the left is, you're going to find the politicians who are extremely immoral. So they don't mind going into an alliance with people who fundamentally hold, very different views to the views of liberal democracies. So you're going to see that Keir Starmer, for example, Zach Polanski, they don't mind shaking hands with a Muslim who believes that gays should not be allowed to be who they are. They should be criminalized, essentially. That's not a problem. The Muslim side does not have a problem with this. The left side does not have a problem with this. And then there is the activists, the media, the academics who are naive. They believe that, oh, those Muslims, those poor Muslims, they are the victims of Western imperialism. They're lovely people, really, but, we are just, bad and mean to them, and we owe them something. So we need to accommodate their values, their culture, and all that stuff. So that alliance, is the result of this. It's the result of the naive activists, the naive media, the naive academia, and the very immoral left that is more than happy to completely throw Britain under the bus just to get Muslim votes.
You believe that so I've asked this question to a few people before you. Most of them said the left-wing politicians that are part of the alliance are very naive. They don't understand that they're going to be eaten up by these Islamists and tossed out once they're no longer useful. You believe that the left wing, the radical extremists on the left, they know that this alliance, they're not naive about it, that it is a practical alliance for them.
Yes,
you think they're doing
yes,
this,
many do.
That they are well aware, for example, that Mohsin Ali does not share their worldview, that they are being cynical.
100%. I'll give you one indication. Have any of them actually sat down and be interviewed by someone who says to them, why are you doing this? Why are you going into an alliance with a man who's an extremist, who supported Hamas on October 7th? Why are you going into an alliance with him? They would never answer these questions. They would never even allow themselves to be in a position where they have to answer these questions because they know that stuff. They're not naive. They read the newspapers. They can go on Twitter. They view all that stuff. They're not naive. They're not completely unaware of that stuff.
According to some data, and that the data that I've seen is fairly compelling on this, the United Kingdom will be minority white British by roughly 2065, which is within yours and my lifetime. We're looking at a time frame of 30, 40 years. 2065, it might even happen with the current rates of migration, it might even happen faster than that. Do you think that these left-wing politicians that enjoy the fruits of liberal society, who live in a society that is very liberal, the United Kingdom is an immensely liberal country with many rights and privileges afforded to citizens, do you think that they understand the dangers of becoming a minority in their own home and sharing that country with people from countries, including your homeland, Egypt, Pakistan, Somalia, Eritrea, Congo, places that profoundly do not share British values? Do you think that they understand the danger of the game that they're playing?
They don't care. That's
Really?
the problem. They don't care. Keir Starmer wants to win today. He wants to keep his job.
You serious? You really think they're that cynical?
He doesn't care. He wants to keep his job. He wants to be prime minister for, his greatest ambition now is to be prime minister until this term actually ends. Because he doesn't know if he's going, if his MPs are actually going to go against him within this week. We're talking, actually, they did today. They started resigning today, and yesterday. Zach Polanski knows that he has a chance and he needs to seize that chance. They don't care. Our politicians think in the cycle of 1 election cycle, 2 election cycles at most. They don't care about what happens to your children or mine. They don't care what happens to me when I'm 60 or to you when you're 60. They don't care about that stuff. They're not looking at, okay, what happens to Britain in 2065. No one cares about that stuff. Whether they're conservative, lefty, or whatever it is, no one cares about that stuff. Because if anyone actually cared, they would have listened in the 90s. When they welcomed, people from the Taliban, when they welcomed, the jihadists, the mujahideen from Afghanistan. They would have cared about that stuff. They would have answered these questions. They don't even have this conversation. No one wants to talk about what happens in 20 years. To London, which is now a seriously threatened city. This is a city now where you have the native population is leaving, has been leaving for decades, and it's being replaced by a population that comes from countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan. We see that, statistically. But they don't care. They don't want to have this conversation. So it's much easier to say people who want to have this conversation are just a bunch of racists. Let's just completely ignore them and everything's fine. That's it.
Is there an actual risk of Islamists taking power in the UK?
Oh, absolutely.
And what timeline is that, Khaled?
I think it's today. It's happening today. So I'll give you one clear indication of this. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, goes to have an iftar during Ramadan.
The iftar being the breaking of the fast at
Yes.
the end of Ramadan.
Yes, exactly. And he promises the Muslim MPs, the Muslim community who are there, that he's going to support Palestine, that he's going to, obviously the recognition, all that stuff, and that they're not going to go to war against Iran. And the Muslims clap. What does that say? They're already in power. They're already influencing how the Prime Minister of the UK makes decisions regarding our national security and our foreign policy. He wants their votes. And they know he wants their votes. So you know what? Don't stand against Iran because Iran is fighting Israel. It happened like it's happening today. Most people need to understand this. It's actually happening today. We're not talking about something that's going to happen in a year or 2 or 10. It's happening today.
What is the solution that you would suggest to solve this problem?
We need deportations of anyone who is a dual national who says, I support Sharia law. Right, you go support Sharia law back in Pakistan. We need deportations. We need measures that make sure that if anyone does something that is against our values or threatens our values, something like, oh, I support Hamas, oh, I don't condemn October 7th, or something like the man who, we had somebody who's actually a convicted terrorist running for local elections. We need to have laws that say none of that is allowed. You are disqualified for life. You won't be able to run for office if you support jihad.
So in order to safeguard a liberal country, we must implement illiberal laws.
100%, but I don't even see these as illiberal laws. Why are they illiberal? Do I have to accept that you're going to come to my country and take over my democracy and turn it into some kind of Islamist or Muslim theocracy for me to be a liberal? Like, does that even make sense? It doesn't make sense. I mean, again, we have to say this. As President Sadat said, every democracy must have teeth. You must be able to protect yourself. It's basically like, do I have to allow a stranger into my house to be a liberal and open-minded person?
Not necessarily.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Otherwise, I'm sort of, an authoritarian who's against freedom of movement. No, it doesn't make sense. Because no one has the right to come here. No one has the right to a visa to Britain. I mean, I've had members of my own family who've done nothing whatsoever, and their visas were rejected just because, the Home Office believed, oh, maybe they will stay with you and they will not go back to Egypt, So why don't they do it with others?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. Khaled Hassan, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yes,
Thank you.
Absolutely.